Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday Night Breakdown. Daniel Ratledge and Dave Forrester with you. Dave, quite a week in the SLB this week. Midweek games, blowouts, overtimes, wild swing comebacks, a little blast from the past in Bristol. There's a lot to get through.
Yeah, absolutely. Albeit I've forgotten most of what happened on Wednesday and Thursday, to be honest. So you're gonna have to remind us, with it being Monday afternoon. This was meant to be kind of a update, kind of, on the nose assessment of weekend games, not
Yeah,
something
yeah.
that happened 2 weeks ago.
Well, given the nature of these games, we won't dwell too
I
long
agree.
on them. Let's start on Wednesday. Sheffield Sharks 93, Manchester Basketball 74. Jeffries out, Groves out, no FAJ, no Madup, no Carey, so only 8 in the lineup for Manchester. I wasn't quite sure how Manchester stayed in this game, to be honest with you. The shot quality differential was huge in the first quarter, and yet somehow it was 18-17. But a 10-0 start to the second quarter. Sheffield had a bit more of a lead that their play deserved.
Yeah, yeah, Manchester. Yeah, okay. I mean, firstly, I'm slightly concerned. Obviously, they got beat by 40 by London at home.
Mm,
So you expect a bit of a bounce back, and then the part of the bounce back is to find that three of them are injured.
mm.
Doesn't fill you with confidence. I'm not saying they weren't injured, but two of them were playing on Sunday or Saturday,
Mm.
you know.
Carey, I
So
believe, was injured in practice running
you need
into
to Delpesh.
Delpesh. Is what the
Yeah,
story
okay.
was.
Well, I'll give Kerry. Look, Kerry's not played that much anyway, so I'll give him a bit of credit. It's not his fault they lost by 40, is it? He's hardly been given a shot. Um, but you're right about the shot quality. And it wasn't so much the shot quality; it was that their Manchester's willingness to settle. I mean, you could watch all their clips on Synergy on this, just put kind of one word on top of it, settling,
Mm,
which is basically the first decent shot. And um they looked miserable.
yeah.
I thought Mitchell looked y- it's the middle of February, right? And it's hard because everybody's at this point wanting to know what they're going to be doing next year. Their
Yeah,
minds are
this
turning.
is
This,
this is for people who don't know. This is the worst time of year, really, because it is
oh,
that thing.
absolutely.
It's you're into the dog days of February. The playoffs seem a long way away. You're thinking about next year. It's cold. It's miserable. It's everything.
They've been away from home for a while,
Yeah.
and when things are going in the wrong direction, it's like a runaway train. It
Mm,
just further off the path, the further you crash. And I just thought watching that game, and you're right, because Sheffield, let's be frank, Sheffield weren't much better. Sheffield for three quarters
mm,
perambulated through the game. Ricky had one of his Ricky kind of occasional games whereby he misses everything and turns it over three or four times until the fourth quarter, and then realizing that the game was still there to be when he made some plays. But they were a little bit short of bodies as well, Sheffield, and they played, or they finished at the very least to the level of Manchester.
mm.
Um, I just remember thinking more of the fact that one, Sheffield were always going to win, and two, Manchester have some serious difficulties. They just have a, for instance, Jason Swain talked about in the commentary. Cody John came in. He hadn't played at the weekend, I don't think. He'd hardly played because he's now behind. He's been pushed back behind Nick Lewis.
Mm.
And so suddenly every time he gets the ball, he's putting it up because he wants to get himself involved in the flow of the game. So every shot's a shot. The same with some of the other guys. Kyle couldn't make a shot,
Mm.
in this game, and none of them that I could see really had the kind of it's togetherness. It's all about togetherness in February. Have you got each other's backs? It doesn't matter who you hate. You've got to hate somebody.
Mm.
You can hate the opposition, you can hate the refs, you can hate yourselves, you can hate your coach, you can hate whatever you want. But you need to be a reason as a group to kind of come together, and you don't get that with Manchester. There's a little bit more with that than with Sheffield because Sheffield are playing for something.
Mm.
Now, for Manchester fans, I think, well, we're playing for something too, but the reality is there's a lot of difference playing for the league than playing for fifth or sixth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you're going to win something versus, potentially finishing fifth and not seventh, or it's a
And
tough game.
that's why winning enough games early on to get yourself in that mix is so important
Yeah, yeah,
because that motivation kind of carries you on against teams that maybe as talented as you, but don't have that same level of desperation,
yeah.
you know? So
Uh,
yeah,
you,
and
you,
yeah,
you,
he went off in the fourth quarter basically.
yeah,
And that
you
was the
kind of touched it. It was tied near the end of the third quarter. Sheffield with a 7-0 run that gave them a cushion, and then the final 3 minutes they just pulled away. It was probably the scoreline that they deserved, but it didn't look like it was going to be with 5 minutes to go. But yeah, comfortable. Nixon 24 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists. McGill 17 points and 9 assists. Rotino 17 points. KO 17. Ashton Langford 14. DeBose and Lewis 13. Then on
Yeah,
th-
sorry, that was the only other thing about it, Dan.
mm,
Sorry. Yeah, I remember now. I had forgotten, Nixon was getting Nixon shots.
mm,
You
yeah.
played him like 3 or 4 times now. I
Mm,
didn't see anybody on Manchester step up and say, right, I'm going to defend this guy. Anybody, and not even Nixon, defend any of the guys.
mm,
I didn't see a plan as to where they wanted the shots to go, who they wanted to shoot the shots. You just saw mental errors.
mm.
And at this point in time, Sheffield are too talented to allow them to do what they want. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. So I was going to move us on to Thursday. Leicester Riders
Right, fair enough.
110, Cheshire Phoenix 87. This game obviously was delayed due to an injury to Simon Unsworth. I did speak to him after the game. He seemed chipper, but I'm not expecting to see him
Oh,
back on the
what happened?
court
Did the
anytime
fan
soon.
finally catch up with him?
No, I believe.
No, joke,
Yeah,
joke,
no,
joke. Sorry,
no, no,
guys,
no,
joke.
no.
Okay.
I believe
Is it worse?
he.
Did the coach catch up with him?
No, no, it was in the corridor. It was in the
No,
corridor.
I was in the corridor.
But
Joke.
he,
What
yeah,
you
he,
got
he,
hit by
he,
a stationary door?
yeah,
Um,
no, he was running on it. He said he'd felt some shin splints or something, and then it sort of
okay,
went,
fair
and he,
enough. Get well soon.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
So
this
Mac
was
came out.
so
Mac's back.
yeah, Mac came back and bless him. He was at the game anyway. I think he was observing or something, but somebody had to bring
Yeah,
his kit in so that he could actually referee the game. And he looked in good shape, to be fair to him.
yeah, he
It,
did.
it was exactly what you would expect in the first quarter with Cheshire of late. Teams freely scoring. We were on for a 200-point game at the end of the first quarter.
Yeah, yeah. Cheshire also now joining Manchester on Spiral Watch.
Mm,
Um, the most interesting thing, Rob's interview before the game was good because I don't remember which numpty was asking the questions, but it is good because basically he accepted, that the Surrey loss was tough,
mm,
right? And that's a big thing about, over the course of a season, you break a season into tranches, right? And you've got certain targets in each tranche. You don't tell the players what those targets are because you just want them to concentrate on winning the next game, right? But you break it into tranches, and basically one of the things you're looking to do because of the nature of the competition, there are 9 teams, there are 2 knockout competitions. So and you get into big finals. So you're looking to get into a final. And this year, 4 out of the 9 teams have got into a final, and
mm,
they're certainly not necessarily the 4 best teams.
mm,
Yeah, so those finals are available to everybody if you
mm,
focus at the right time and play at the right time. Ergo, when you lose a game like you do, and it's the second time they've lost effectively lost a home second leg, it is going to be debilitating.
mm,
It's going to really impact you because it's something you really work for. And in order to deal with that, the first thing you have to do is accept that.
mm,
And the first thing you have to do is say, yeah, it was tough, and you have to have hard conversations about, is this going to kill us or is this going to make us better? Because if you don't address those conversations, if you don't address those issues, then it continues.
mm,
It's not a spiral as such, but it's just in the background. That's how a team can break if you don't address them. So you've got to get your guys back together and then focusing on the next target, which sounds easy and it sounds common sense, but it's not because it's February, as we talked about before.
mm,
And the first thing with that is you have to accept, yeah, it was tough. It was a tough loss, but
mm.
we've talked about it and
And in
we've
this scenario, you've got the international break
You've got
a
international
few
break
days
coming up.
away, so you got
Well, they're in a but they're
after
in
a
a good
slog.
spot.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and they're in a good spot from the league,
yeah.
So they have two more games to kind of deal with. So, they still have a lot to play for. But as I say, that kind of loss can be gutting. So they dealt with that well. Um, then Cheshire, yeah, they went up and down. And yeah, they scored some points, but they were pretty dysfunctional in this game.
Mm,
They're always going to be able to put numbers up at times. They've got guys who can score, but they have some pretty significant holes in their roster, I'm afraid, certainly in defending the paint. And in this game, they got, for whatever reason, very little out of Larry Austin, who they needed to kind of keep the second unit running. And instead,
mm,
I don't think Larry scored. And Ben had an argument, not an argument, but then Ben was telling him to pass the ball and all sorts of stuff. And I just thought, the reason Leicester is 12 and 4, Dan, or 11 and 4, 12 and 4, right, is because they've lost one game in Newcastle, two games to Sheffield, one game at London,
mm,
right? They beat everybody else. And they beat everybody else relatively comfortably. It's like their consistency is their strength
mm,
in that they knock off teams who have flaws because they don't beat themselves. And I think they have quite a lot of talent on the court.
mm,
And this was just an example of this game. Leicester played four quarters and Cheshire played, I don't even think they played the first quarter. They did okay, but the reality was mentally, they looked beaten down.
yeah.
And it didn't look like they liked each other. And it didn't look any of them liked each other.
Mm,
Um, so again, it's that togetherness at this point of the season, which is a problem.
mm,
And the Cheshire bench, Leicester bench, and Shelton in particular, and Brooks is beginning to step up and make some shots, and he's shooting 40%. So if you're getting 6 or 7 good minutes out of him, then that's a bonus for them as well.
mm.
The Leicester bench just crushed Cheshire.
Yeah, right. Hit a couple of threes. Shelton bringing the energy, getting to the free throw line a lot as well, and he was nearly perfect from the free throw line as well. Leicester were 46-34 ahead, but the issue was that was after 16 minutes. That wasn't even a
Yeah.
half-time score. And then third quarter, Leicester a 13-0 run. It was 82-60, and that was
Well,
well,
there's a couple of things, and by the way, good call on the abominable missed half court call. That was just not good.
yeah, yeah, that was random,
Um,
wasn't it?
it was a random one, but you've got to be able to process that. I mean, the guy literally just because he saved it once doesn't mean he hadn't saved it to the second guy. I mean, that was you've got to be able to spot that.
Mm,
Sorry, it's a newish ref, but she's got to be able to spot that. And and as you say, then halfway through the third quarter, after TJ Atwood's committed a ridiculous foul at the end of the second quarter, and basically Ben's called him over and
mm,
looked like he wants to not spot soften basically because TJ was like, wow, they're in the penalty with 3 seconds to go and he reaches
mm.
out with half court fouls,
Yeah,
if you remember. It's like, what are
yeah,
you
I
doing
do,
that
yeah.
for? That's not good. And then middle of the third quarter, Cheshire are going 5 for 5 on subs.
Mm,
And I think it's probably the second or third time this season they've had to do that. And the problem with 5 for 5 on subs is it sends a message to the five that have been playing, absolutely.
mm,
But in 5 minutes, it's probably not every single one of those guys' fault.
mm,
It's probably there's two or three of them that are really the ones screwing. It's rare that everybody is screwing up,
mm,
which means that you end up in that situation where if you take everybody out and put them all, they all sit on the bench thinking it's somebody else's fault.
mm,
And then therefore, by definition, it's a coach's fault, which adds more to the kind of the dysfunction around it. And it was I get why he did it, but as I say, you can run that probably once or twice a year at most, and they're in danger of having it wear out its welcome. Um, in reality, without Austin, their pace changes. Austin is everybody chases Austin, everybody follows Austin
mm,
insofar the speed that he plays. It makes everybody run because they know he's running. Um, when he's not being impactful, Holden really isn't a guy for that type of thing. He's more of a walk it up player,
mm.
and their defense was just picked apart by Leicester.
Yeah. So the top scorers were Shelton 19.8 rebounds, Jackson 19.6 assists, Wright 17 points. I managed not to write down the Cheshire one, so I'm just opening the thing. It was Holden 18 points and 5 assists, TJ Atwood 15 points, and Skylar White 5 of 8 for 3 for 15 points.
Well, they had 96 points after three quarters, didn't they? Something
Yeah, yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah.
Which, given that they'd given up 66 in the last two quarters at Newcastle,
Mm,
that's 162 points in six quarters, something like that. Oh, no, sorry, 162 points in five quarters.
mm,
I know James was doing your interview beforehand talking about how much they'd emphasize defense, but
mm.
probably the wrong team to come up against at that
Yeah,
point. But,
yeah,
but
yeah.
they got to fight. They got to fight. Basically, I mean, what is it? It's easy to say the defense is rubbish. That's kind of very bland and unhelpful to people who are listening to this. Firstly, they got to stop gambling. They gamble too much defensively,
Mm,
right? They put themselves out of position because they're looking for steals, right? Secondly, they got to stay in front of people on the perimeter. Okay, because if you're struggling for shot blocking, you can still play around that, but
mm,
you've got to hold up the drives. That means you've got to make people shoot. You got to get your distances right, your closeout distances right. Make people shoot tough jump shots,
mm,
contested jump shots. Leicester's the hardest team in the league to do that again because the ball moves so quickly. Okay, you've got to be disciplined about when you double team. Who are you double teaming off?
mm.
Who are you willing to give a shot up to? Because too often the double teams were random and the ball went to somebody like Johnson or
Yeah,
Abercrombie.
they have the worst opposition for 3-point shooting percentage, i.e., teams shoot 40% against them.
And the biggest thing, Dan, and it's a combination of all of them, is you have to defend without fouling,
Yeah.
right? They committed, I think it was a 21 and 9 in this game. And out of the nine, I think two of Leicester's weren't fouls. So, so that's probably 21 to 7. And
24 to
if
9.
24 to 9, sorry,
Yeah.
if you're in the penalty, within 5 minutes of every quarter, you're
Yeah.
in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're the things that they have to emphasize. It's basically detail. They're all pro players, so they can all defend now. Some will be better than others. Yeah. But if you haven't got the foot speed or you haven't got the length, then you can have the smarts and you can have the discipline, right? There's no athletic difference outside of Charles Thompson between that Leicester team and that Cheshire team.
Mm,
They are the same. In relation to the body, the types of bodies they've got on the wing. Scott Grayson matches up with Jackson. The guards are, Timberlake and Wright, all of those stuff. Holden's probably a matchup problem for Hunter more than anything else. But there's no reason why they can't guard them,
mm,
right, if they're disciplined. But it seemed to me that their first line of defense was okay. But as soon as there was any degree of penetration, there was no rotation, there was no help, they didn't know who they were leaving, they just weren't on a string, they weren't disciplined enough.
mm,
And so that's a structural issue that they need to solve. I'm not sure that personnel changes are going to do it.
mm,
I think it's a structural issue defensively that they have to solve, and they have to figure out which way they're going to play as well. How fast are they going to play? But more than anything, if you're committing fouls, 24 fouls to 9,
mm.
that means you're not disciplined enough, and you've got to be better.
And Leicester were 29 of 32 from the free throw line.
Yeah, and I guarantee you, about 10 to 12 of them will have been 3 points
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
on penalty foul shots.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
3 points, and 10 points, 12 points, that's a basketball game.
Mm, mm,
It keeps
yeah.
you close.
Yeah. Let's go to Friday. Bristol Flyers 75, London Lions 78. Sheffield is still out. No Holloway for London as yet. Well, there was time out after 2 minutes. It was 6-0. Andreas was livid with them, I think it was fair to say, but it didn't get any better. Weirdly, watching this back, and I knew the final score by the time I watched this game. I didn't watch it till Saturday night. I didn't think London were playing offensively that well in the first quarter, and yet they were 22 to 1 up inside the final minute of the first quarter.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's the same thing with the 5-on-5. The tearing a strip off after 2 minutes timeout it can wear its welcome out.
Mm,
But they were on spiral watch, so kind of again, you give the coach a bit of leeway to do whatever he does to try and inject some kind of emotion into the team. I think they threw maybe a turnover or something before, and it was just kind of slightly sloppy play that Andreas wasn't helpful about. Um, but London are I mean, London are, I mean, the biggest thing about London is I said last week is Soko. Soko has really stepped up to be the leader of that team. I can almost imagine the conversation that Bozic must have had with him about 6 weeks ago.
Mm,
About being the identity of the team, being the leader of the team, being not being the physical enforcer, but more than that, because he's a mega talented, athletic big guy playing the five spot in this league. He's in reality he's basically the perfect baby at SLB5.
mm,
Doesn't shoot the three that much, but you don't really. But he's kind of undersized but springy, quick, athletic. All the guys that we've seen over the years have real
mm.
success, but we don't think of him like that because he's not an American over here for his first year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's really stepped up, um, and around him now they have a quite a formidable defensive unit.
Mm,
They really do. Peterson is a really solid defensive guard. He doesn't take a backward step. Um, Brisker is quick, probably not, you'd say, a primary defender, but then the rest of them,
mm,
Delaire starting at the 4 at 6'10". Well, no one else has got that.
mm,
No one else has got that length. Rai at 6'6" is, we know how good Rai is, both ends of the court. And then Soko Hadzibegovic, and then you bring in all your long athletic guys off the bench, and particularly Adebayo, who's a real menace. And it kind of just feeds into almost unstoppable defensive momentum during games. And
mm.
that's what happened in this game. And Bristol got more. Bristol didn't get good shots in the first 8 minutes.
No.
It wasn't a. London shut them down.
I thought that defensively, London were really good. I didn't think they were that great offensively, but they didn't
But
need to be because
defense leads
defensively,
to offense.
if
It
there's
leads to
one on the board, it doesn't really
Yeah,
matter, does it?
it leads to offense. It leads to
Yeah,
second shots. It leads. That's right. They're not ever going to be last year's purring London
yeah,
machine.
yeah, yeah.
That's not what they're going to be. They don't have the EuroLeague, Euro Cups level of play. They don't have a Conor Morgan to space the floor, or obviously a Decker or a Tariq or Jordan Taylor or anything like that. They're not going to be that.
Mm,
But what they've found is an identity in relation to their defense.
mm.
And I'll be honest, I feared Bristol's season.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but because if they've had a few gut punches, solar plexus
Mm,
punches, whatever, over the past couple of weeks. And I think I wasn't. This is not something I was expecting to say, but at half time, I was thinking that Owen McCormack had saved their season.
mm. So let's get to that because 42 seconds to go in the first quarter was the Flyers' first field goal of the game, a Walsh three. McCormack then hit a three on the buzzer and one to start the second quarter. So that got them into double figures. 15 minutes into the game before they got their first points in the paint. A couple of Robinson uh, dunks and from 20 down they scored the last 12 points of the half and then the first score of the third
Yeah,
quarter as well to make
I
it
thought,
6.
yeah, firstly, I thought McCormack put them on his back in the first half. I
Mm,
wasn't expecting that because when you're down and it's February and everybody's feeling sorry for themselves, which is what they look like. Let's be
mm,
honest.
mm,
And the coach has called two timeouts and he's cursed you out. You're just looking for a spark from somebody. You're looking for a bit of pride, a little bit of kind of, this ain't happening to me type of thing. And I didn't think it would be McCormack.
mm,
I mean, it was. I give him an enormous amount of credit for that
mm,
because he single-handedly changed the momentum of that basketball game. I
mm,
thought, and we know that London, at the end of the day, even though London's defense was great, their offense wasn't, and certainly their bench offense is flaky at best. I mean, they've been carried the last few weeks by Flood making some shots off the
mm,
bench. But if he doesn't make some shots, then you're not quite sure with all their scorers in the starting lineup and the way and Bozic is playing like 9 or 10 guys, so he's basically playing a full bench rotation. You're not that sure where offense is going to come from. And in that gym, it just needs a bit of energy and a bit of momentum
mm,
and for the Flyers to pick up. And credit to them, they did. But as I say, primarily it was all about McCormack, and
mm,
then everybody else came to the party.
mm. Just before we go to the second half, 40 seconds from halftime, Johnson Steele foul by Brisker. I didn't know how that wasn't an unsportsmanlike foul. I've asked the question. I've not had an
Johnson
answer.
Steele,
And
is
Brisker
that the
he just sort of grabbed at him. and he's last man back. He's coming in from the side. I just couldn't work out how that was not an
There
unsportsmanlike.
was one I saw this, I can't remember. There was one I saw this week where, but I think it was yesterday, where the ref didn't call it unsportsmanlike, and it was because he wasn't coming in from, he was in front of him.
Mm,
By the time the foul was called, he was past him, if that makes any sense.
mm, mm.
But I actually don't remember it, Dan. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I would have seen it. I
to
don't
me,
remember it.
it looked like one of those they would use as an example of what an unsportsmanlike foul is. But as I
I'll
say, I
check it out.
might be
I'm sorry.
completely wrong on that, but it looked like a blatant unsportsmanlike foul to me. Anyway, Lions up 9 after 2 minutes of the third quarter, and then Bristol went on a 23-6 run to lead 54-48 going into the fourth quarter, and they turned everything around.
Yeah, and it was a six, wasn't it? They began to
Yeah.
hold them back defensively and hold them off on the board. And that's why, London are still a work in progress in relation to their offensive connections between each other, because there's no guarantee they're going to get substantial scoring out of the point guard spot. Peterson came to the party at the end of this game, but he's been quite spotty in relation to his offense.
Mm,
Um, and then the rest of them, they're a little bit clunky. Right at the three, there's an argument in our league. Rye's more of a four or even a one than a three.
mm,
Because at the four he's got a mismatch on anybody, and at the one he can control the game. He's not going to bring the ball up the court, but he's a point forward
mm,
effectively. And you're playing with Delay, who can play on the perimeter, but he's not a natural perimeter player. In comparison with, for instance, Conor Morgan last year, for
mm,
instance, who
mm,
would be to catch the ball and he'd be going up, or a Mark Loving or a Scott Martin. That's not Jaden Delaire. He's a four-stroke five.
mm,
And so that kind of does make them a little bit clunky when teams get into them. And the danger in Bristol is that, if they turn you over, they'll run on you,
mm.
and they get inspired, and Walsh is going to run and Johnson is going to run. And I thought London lost a little bit of focus, but I was super impressed by the way that they regained it.
Yeah, so they were 63-51 down with 6 minutes left, but then had a 15-3 run, and the game was tied at 66 with 2 to go. So we'll just go through the last.
Yeah, it was their defense.
Yeah,
It was all about their defense.
yeah,
And Peterson made a couple of big threes, I think, and somebody else made one as well. Can't remember who. Delaney maybe made one as well,
he did.
and
Yeah.
that it was just enough to kind of get them back in with their defense.
So 150 to go. Lewis with the three, 69-66. 140 to go. Brisker to the rim, foul by Smith. 2 free throws makes it a 1 point game. Lewis again for three, 72-68. He then blocks Peterson going to the rim, and the Flyers get it back. But Johnson, a bad pass. They turned it over, and they could have really killed the game there. It was one of
That
the.
was a
Mm,
brutal turnover.
yeah,
That was I think because it was about 18 seconds on the shot
yeah,
clock.
yeah,
It
yeah.
was quite early in the offense. It wasn't, you got 120 to go, you run the clock down, you can be up by four with a shot with less than a minute to go.
Mm,
That puts you in pretty good stature. But instead you turn it over and they're coming back the other way, a live ball turnover.
mm.
Was it an and one off that? Was
Yeah,
it an and
Dallaire
one?
to the rim with an and one, 72-71, 55 seconds to go. Walsh
That's
then,
4 points with the ball,
yeah,
4 points with the shot of 55 seconds or a 1 point game, where it's
mm,
basically a toss up.
yeah, yeah.
Those plays matter.
Walsh was then blocked by Dallaire out of bounds. Bristol ball. I actually thought in real time it might be a London ball because he threw it off Walsh, who was out of bounds. But I went back on Synergy and sort of rocked and rolled it, and it's inconclusive because you can't quite see when the ball left his hand. His foot might be down, so it'd be a difficult
I
one
thought
to.
he was definitely in court when he jumped, wasn't he?
He was definitely in court when he jumped, but it's whether he'd got the ball out of his hands before he landed and threw it
Yeah.
at Walsh. So, as I say, because his back is to the camera, it's inconclusive when the ball comes out of his hands. 31.8 seconds to go. Tough drive and finish from Walsh makes it 74-71.
Yeah.
Timeout advance the ball. Rye straight line drive to the rim. Cuts it to 1 point again with 27 seconds to go.
Yeah, and the thing about that was how quick it happened.
Yeah.
You can't be giving up a shot with 31 seconds to go, you're not in, and you're up three, you're not in no three situation.
Mm,
You're in solid defense situation, right? Because they make a three, but you've still got the last shot
mm,
to win the game. They make a quick two, then suddenly you're in a situation whereby there's two possessions left.
mm,
And two possessions left is a problem because you're only up by one.
mm.
So Rye's really good at that, but Buzic must have emphasized that in the timeout as well. So you have to give him credit for that.
Lions had to use two fouls to get to the limit. They almost forced two turnovers on them, mind.
Yeah.
But 17 and a half seconds to go. Walsh goes 1 for 2 from the free throw line, 75-73. And then Rye drives, he slips. Somehow he made the pass out to Dallaire, who hits a three with 6.4 seconds to go, and it's
Yeah, that was it. That
75-76.
was it. That was scrum half, wasn't it? Scrum
Yeah, it
half, Aaron
was.
Rye.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but that's the opposite situation. Then you're in a no three situation
Yeah.
because you're up two.
Mm,
You're in a no three situation, and Dallaire is now developing enough of a rep,
mm,
having the one that he made at Surrey,
mm,
and having made a few other shots in at the end of games that you can't be giving him rhythm threes with
mm.
6 seconds to go, and that was a rhythm three. So, yeah, they overhelped on Rise Drive, possibly cognizant of the fact he'd scored previously.
Yeah.
And, Ryan makes the right play. He always
Mm,
does.
mm.
Um, and credit to Delaire for knocking it down.
Timeout, advance the ball, and we got the ghost of Bristol past a 5 second
Yeah, we did, didn't
violation
we?
from that spot. There was actually three 5 second violations in the game. That was the only one that was in the spot, though.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But I mean, I did look at it back, but I thought it was a pretty solid 5 seconds. I don't know
Well,
if you measured
because
it.
there was a cutaway to a Bristol fan, beautiful cutaway to a Bristol fan going, that's not 5 seconds. I thought
Yeah,
I counted it. It felt like 5 seconds to me. And
me.
I thought I'd check it on Synergy. For some reason, this game took ages. It didn't come up till last night, but I checked it last night. And on Synergy, each play is a clip. So it's got a clock at the bottom and it's very easy
Yeah,
to do these things. So I went through it. And you can slow it down to a quarter speed, so it becomes very easy to see exactly what the clock is at the point he slaps. So at the point he gets the ball. So Evan Walsh got the ball, two hands on the ball at 2.4 seconds. He does that slap thing at 2.8
yeah.
seconds, and the whistle goes at 8.0 seconds. So I would say that's just about the perfect count from
Right.
Steve Ferris there. It was essentially 5.2
Uh,
from the slap. You can't get
and
much
what
better
happened,
than
of
that.
course, is that what happened, Bristol ran the loop for Keedy.
Mm.
So Keedy curls to the corner. But nobody really, but the danger with that is if he starts out a little bit too late, nobody pops out to catch the basketball.
Yeah.
He's the one who then has to come back up from the corner to be available again.
Mm. Yeah.
And didn't get up in time. So that if you're gonna run that, you've got to have normally the release guy is the big guy,
Mm.
right? So what I mean by release guy is everybody curls, and then the big guy who's sitting in the middle, steps out and catches a basketball, and it's a handoff. The problem they had is that there's only 6 seconds left.
Mm.
So, are you looking, and the question is that 6 seconds, are you looking to gain an advantage with the pass to set yourself up with something?
Mm.
Or are you just looking to get the ball to your best player? I'm thinking when he's got enough time to create. And the kind of the line in the sand for me on that is about 6 seconds. Anything less than 6 seconds, then you're looking to get some form of action off off the pass, like Cheshire did with Timberlake, for
Mm.
instance,
Yeah. Yeah.
in the Newcastle game, or like Leicester did with Leicester have done multiple times on the curl players um with Abercrombie again at
Mm.
Newcastle, right? You get action, you're scoring almost immediately. Anything more than 6 seconds, you just get the ball to your best player.
Mm.
Because he ultimately, and even if you got to clear out, let him make a play. They kind of got stuck in between.
Mm.
It's the worst thing in the world not to get, not to get a shot. Not you've got a shot to win the game, you don't get the ball in. And the other thing is the guy who's got the ball has to know. So he has to think, I'm going to throw the ball. I'm going to throw the ball off the guy in front of his legs,
Mm.
and then jump to get out of the way to make sure it
Yeah.
doesn't hit him on the way out.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, just throw it against his legs and throw it out of bounds and get another shot at it. So yeah, a bit of a really dispiriting for Bristol to lose, but in the grand scheme of things, the fact that they were 22-1 down and they dragged it back and showed a bit of gumption was really important for them because they haven't
Yeah.
necessarily showed much of that recently.
So just to finish it off, Peterson made two free throws, 75-78, and then they timeout advance ball, inbounded it to McCormack, and he turned it over. So they didn't get shot off two inbounds. But as you say, from 22-1 down, an incredible comeback. But then the flip side of
Didn't
that
finish. Oh,
is,
massive win for
yeah,
London to be 12 down in that gym.
yeah, yeah.
You know, to be 12 down in that gym, and London have now played 18 games now, I think, something like that, 14-4, something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, so they've only got 14 games left, so they're on the home straight.
Mm,
To get, that's a losable game, and you can't be affording to lose many games
mm,
now. To come back down from, 12 down or 11 down in 6 minutes to go in that gym when you've been up 20 early on, to have that presence of mind. And I think a lot of it was lineups. I think his starting five is really, really good. His bench is still, you don't know what you're going to get. Um, but they just shut Bristol down at the beginning of the game and at the end of the game.
mm. Walsh 17, Lewis 16, McCormack 15 points, 9 rebounds. Dallaire 20.7 rebounds, Peterson 18, Brisker 16 points and 5 assists. Uh, Newcastle 86, Caledonia 81 after overtime. Ward Hibbert back. I've written Defoe. Defoe, did he play? Where did I write that? I've written
Yeah, he
down
did, he
Defoe.
did
Yeah,
play,
so
yeah.
he was back as well. Gladiators
He
led
couldn't
by
go because he beat a record. He'd got a
field goal. Field goals made and
record.
field goals attempted. He moved up the list.
Yeah, I think he was number two
Uh
or something, like
yeah,
Drew said.
past Billy Singleton, I believe.
Who's number
Um
one?
I don't know. It's one of I assume it's
Scans?
Fab.
Maybe Scans.
Field goals
No,
made.
no,
Maybe
Fab
it's
didn't make
scans.
it.
Maybe it is. I don't
Might be
know.
Scans.
It's one of them I
Scans,
don't have easily available because who
right.
cares about field goals attempted?
Yeah, I
So
know. I've never come across. Yeah, exactly. I agree with that.
no,
It was a weird one.
yeah. Except for me, who creates the list that
Yeah,
says
it's
he's about
spreadsheet.
to
Yeah,
overtake him. So obviously, there we
yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah.
But it's good to see that Drew reads it.
Yeah,
Gladiators led by 8 early on. A couple of Okoro threes helped tie the game up at 21-21, and that was kind of the sign of things to come.
yeah. It was nice to see. I genuinely mean this. It was nice to see Caledonia looking like a functional basketball team.
Mm, mm,
The biggest thing they played against Surrey, and they could have beaten Surrey, but if you remember that Surrey game they played with Johnny Bunyan coaching was a game of massive runs,
mm,
whereby some lineups really worked and some lineups were really horrific.
mm,
Well, in this game they didn't have Teddy Okafor, not sure why, not been announced.
mm,
So basically it was Deville Ramsey's first real game, having had
mm,
2 weeks in. And what I said about McGill a few weeks ago is that if you're a veteran and you're coming back to this league and you've been waiting, sitting on your hands all summer or all fall to get a job, then you're coming back in with a purpose.
yeah.
There's no, and you mentioned it on Sunday, there's no question of fitting in or figuring things out. You know what you're going in for.
Mm,
You've been at Sheffield for 2 years, you understand all about it. And so he came in to run the point, and then you had Pat Whelan, Fraser Malcolm, Toto Fag-Bentley, and Trevon Barnes. So basically, three British players and Trevon Barnes. Um, and quite ironic, really, given that Ramsey was the 10th import, that they're the
yeah.
guys who are playing the young, the development British players, certainly, in addition to Fag-Bentley and to a lesser degree, Malcolm. Um, and that two things about that. One, they played together,
Mm,
they moved the ball, and they are huge when you actually see them in person. Fag-Bentley is pretty big.
mm,
Malcolm's long, 6'7". Um, they provided a degree of physicality that I don't think Newcastle would necessarily expect. And they're finally using Barnes as a five, which is kind of what we said from
mm,
about September, isn't it?
yeah,
When they
yeah.
were trying to play him at the four spot, and they had Stuckman at the four, and then they had Ali Hodzic and Hughes at the five. So Barnes had to play a bit of forward. He's a five in this league because
Mm,
he's long, he's athletic, he can roll, he can finish, and he can step out and shoot the occasional three. And I thought, you know, given that on top of the fact that they had a typical Ramsey veteran bounce back game,
mm,
but they looked together and they looked competitive, and they looked like they knew what they were meant to be doing. In fact, it's really quite ironic that they played Newcastle 6 times, and the only game they've won is when they look like an absolute rabble.
It's true. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I remember, when we were
Yeah.
talking about, is that the worst shot you've ever seen?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
hold my beer. There's another one
The
coming in the
second
third
one.
quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's the only game they've won. So
Yeah. Yeah.
all this crap I'm
Yeah.
talking,
Yeah. Yeah.
doesn't necessarily result in wins and losses. But so that was useful. That was good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, that they seem to have a little bit of, now they've still got a talent deficiency,
Yeah.
I'm afraid. And what I mean, Benny is just so raw. In this game he did really well, I thought, because he didn't force any shots. Newcastle probably didn't do a good enough job of making Caledonia throw him the ball, and but Newcastle couldn't really guard Ramsey, particularly his quickness early on in the game. Um,
Uh,
and they only
s-
played 8 players. Sorry,
yeah.
go on.
Yeah.
They only played 8 players.
Yeah.
Go on.
Second quarter, Knight left the game in the middle of it. Didn't return. I didn't see any obvious reason as to why,
No,
unless
neither
you
did
saw
I.
anything.
It wasn't playing
Uh,
very well. Did say
well,
that.
yeah, no, but you'd still come
Yeah,
back at some point,
that's
wouldn't
true.
you?
Uh,
40-36, just before halftime, Gladiators went on a 14-2 run around the break to lead 42-50 early in the third quarter.
yeah, well, this was the archetypal. I know Nakara was awesome. We'll get to that in a minute.
Best
But this was the
scorer in the world, I saw on Twitter today.
wasn't
Europe.
me.
No, Coro, yesterday. Or, well, he
All
said
right, he scored
yesterday,
more than
but it was
anybody.
obviously Saturday. He scored more points
Yeah,
than anybody else in the world, according to Eurobasket.
well, yeah, well, okay, yeah, all right. That goes with second top in field goals, doesn't it? But this was a Defoe game.
Mm,
Newcastle don't win. I mean, Newcastle's guys, they apart from Okoro, but if you look at it, I think Caledonia had 17 points in the first 5 minutes of this game,
mm,
6 minutes, and Defoe comes in, they had 6 points in the next 10 minutes,
mm,
um, and the same at the beginning of the third quarter. They struggled he clogged up the middle and defended with and actually made some jump shots as well, which helped. But he did everything that you need to do, loose balls, everything. And it's Caledonia, so he's still got the old jock hatred in him from 20
mm.
years ago.
Yeah.
But seriously, he was the best player. But he was the best player when they played in the game they lost at Christmas as well.
Mm,
Um, and I think without him they struggle because of the defense. Because Caledonia, particularly Ramsey and William to a certain degree, they were able to pick him apart on the screen and roll until Darius was in the game. But ultimately, it was a game of bang 3 point shots. Okara made a couple. I think Malcolm maybe made one. Maybe somebody else as well made one for Caledonia. Um, but basically, it came down to could they stop
mm.
Mike?
Uh, Before we get to the end,
Yeah.
Eagles gaining a bit of momentum in the fourth quarter. 7 minutes to go. Kane slips, turns the ball over, grabs the foot of James. I thought he was probably a little lucky to get an unsportsmanlike foul, to be
I
honest with
thought
you.
in the crowd, I was thinking I didn't quite see it.
Mm,
I was thinking if what I thought happened, and they did. Refs, to be fair, did immediately call in sports like then had a chat about it.
mm,
And I've not two things. Firstly, for all I've talked nicely about seven of the Caledonia Gladiators because they brought Hughes and Onwas off the bench as well. Kane wasn't interested.
mm,
Sorry, Kane's body language is rubbish.
mm,
I don't think it was much better on Sunday. I thought, he he doesn't look like he wants to be there. I'd be surprised if he's there at the end of the season. He can't be like that in a game like that.
mm,
Just the way he was mooching around talking to the refs. I just thought it was rubbish.
mm,
Because he should be starting for that team because he's probably the most talented player they have, scoring wise. He had 20 in the game up there at Christmas, and he should be starting. And the reason he's not starting is because it's quite clear his mentality, and that was evidenced by what he did. Now,
mm,
I thought about it afterwards. I watched it and I thought exactly what you thought. And it's like, what do you compare that to? Because I don't really think I've ever kind of really seen it before.
mm.
Um, and the best comparison I could come up with was it's the equivalent of pushing somebody in the back as they're going for a layup.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
You know, if you're deliberately grabbing hold of somebody's ankle, these guys are 6'5", their body's going in one direction and their ankle's coming in the other direction.
And it wasn't the same as what Rye did because Shelton wasn't running anywhere. I can't remember who
That's
he
right.
even grabbed. Oh, James, it was. James was actually running at that point.
Yeah. And I mean, there was a famous NBA case where Van Gundy ran on the court and
Mm,
grabbed one of Jeff Van Gundy grabbed one of the, I think it might have been the Houston Rockets players or somebody by the leg. But it's one thing wrapping yourself around somebody's leg, but when somebody's running away from you,
mm,
I just think it's as cheap and dangerous a play as you're ever going to see.
mm.
And I think I would be surprised if that ever happens again, if someone doesn't get thrown out. I don't blame the refs because I'm not sure I would have been able to
Yeah,
process that in real time
no,
myself. Because in time thinking they're thinking about throwing him out, but can they be sure? If you can't be sure, then you shouldn't do it.
yeah.
But in any event, he didn't get thrown out. But
Well,
Johnny took him out, and he didn't play again.
Johnny gave him the double fist, didn't he? Because he sat him down and he never
Yeah,
came
and
back.
quite, and again, that's a good thing because that's impressive because that builds a culture. That means you're not chasing,
Mm,
you're not going to drop your level or your standard just to chase a win.
yeah.
Because you think it might be better. You got to earn your way in. So I got no problem with that. So yeah, I thought they were lucky.
So you've got those
I
two
thought he
free
was for
throws. Okoro then banks in a three. Then he steals the ball, and then Fagbenley then grabs him. That's another unsportsmanlike foul, and
absolutely.
they score on the inbound. So they were just starting to get momentum, and then those two unsportsmanlike help
Yeah,
Newcastle carry that on and lead by 69-63.
in fact, Bentley's play again is just a lazy play. He didn't pop
Mm,
out to the ball. He had a currow on him, so he should know that he's have to pop out to the ball strong
mm,
to get the catch the ball. And he's not used to it. He's not used to playing that role. And the currow, so I've got a big arm. He's leading around, and I've got a layup. And then Bentley puts his hands out. So yeah, just little mental mistakes, which really kind of hurt Caledonia at that point.
2 minutes to go. It's a 2 point Eagles lead. Both teams then miss, so it's still a 2 point game, 76-74 with a minute to go. Long misses. Fagbenley misses, but somehow tips it up and in. So with 30 seconds to go, it's 76-76. Timeout. No advance of the ball. Okoro drives into traffic, misses, tips out to James, who misses a three. And then Whelan rebounds it with 13 seconds to go. And Whelan kicked out to Barnes, who had a decent look for three, but missed it. There
Yeah,
was a
first
lot going
Newcastle.
on there. I went through
Yeah,
everything.
that
There
was.
wasn't really any stoppage points.
No, Newcastle, I think, didn't score for the last 4 minutes.
Mm,
And without Knight and Alan Aikens wasn't in the game, Long missed a couple of looks. James never really had it going. So all their individual scorers, Pulliam was 2 of 8, struggling a little bit with the length of Caledonia. So
mm,
their individual scorers, which is what they've gone to at the end of games, have found guys who can put the ball in the basket. It was basically a Okoro, and Okoro was dog tired by this point because he carried them on his back for the past 30 minutes. So they didn't score for the last 4 minutes, and Caledonia just about grabbed their way back into it. They got a little bit lucky with the tipping. I'm not even sure it was Fab Bentley who tipped it.
mm,
Um, but Newcastle were there. The shot at the end, I mean, I thought ultimately it was probably the right play for the Eagles and probably not a bad play for the Gladiators.
mm.
Barnes is shooting probably 25, 26% from three. He's not a knockdown shooter. And you want the ball out of Whelan's hands.
Mm. Yeah,
So
yeah.
if you can make Whelan give up the ball, then to me, if Barnes beats you with that three, you tip your hat and you walk away and you say, well done.
Mm.
Far better than letting Whelan stroll his way at the basket.
Yeah, yeah.
Thought it was good, mind. From my seat, it looked
Oh,
good.
did you? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it was just a bit short, but it looked good.
Mm.
So yeah, yeah,
Into overtime, Gladiators didn't score for the first 3.5 minutes, but Eagles didn't put it away in that point. And then a terrible 8 second violation, and Wheeler makes a three, and it's 80-79 with 125 to go.
yeah. Well, they got 3 point shot happy to Caledonia, and they were a little bit tired because they're only playing with basically, Hughes and almost played about 15 minutes each, but the other and Kane a little bit, but the rest of those guys played a lot of minutes. Okoro made one, almost miraculous play in overtime
Mm,
where he got a rebound and went down the court and full speed in real time, and then kind of jumped off the wrong foot and shot an 8 foot floater.
mm,
And I'm like, dear me, I think this guy got cut from Pro A and Pro B in France.
mm.
Why is he not in Pro A in France? You know, I was like, whoa, it was just a ridiculous, ridiculous play. Um, and I think Alan Aikens came in for long, which meant that they had a little bit more offense. I think Alan Aikens made a shot as well, so a little bit more offense from him. But he also missed a wide open three in the corner. I put them up seven, which would have probably iced the game. And then, yeah, Caledonia got a timeout, and probably the only lapse that Coro had in the whole game was not having his hand up on Patrick Whelan on that catch.
Yeah.
Patrick Whelan drained it, and so it's a 1 point game. So we're back in again. We're back to
Minute to go, end of the shot clock. The Foe mid-range, 82.79. Barnes missed an open three. Eagles ran the clock, 20 seconds to go. Great shot from Okoro, made it 84.79.
Yeah, well, I mean, Darius's 20 footer was pretty important
Mm,
because, as I say, you don't want to be giving opposition a chance to go ahead because then the momentum changes. And, to knock that shot down at that point, I think he played 31 minutes in this game, which is by far more than he's played all season. Um, but I mean, the Mike Okoro shot, again in the gym, it's tight, it was one of those genuinely kind of watching it, genuinely thrilling kind of moments
mm,
because it was a Kawhi Leonard shot
mm,
against the Sixers insofar as he dribbled away from the basket to a spot on the floor, landed, jumped, turned, shot it with two guys who knew he was shooting it with 2 seconds on the shot clock.
mm,
And at that point, he's already got like 36. And you know it's a bit good because you look around and people aren't just going, yeah, people are going, whoa.
yeah.
And there's quite a few fans seeing a lot of things. So at that point, you knew Newcastle were going to win because you can't defend that any better than you did. Look, Patrick Whelan's a good defender. Caledonia had some good defensive players playing there. They shut everybody else down.
Mm,
And Mike Okoro went off for 40
mm,
in a game, which was a pretty, dead game before the 2 week break,
mm.
you know. Um, just just a compelling performance from him. 8 from 8 from the foul line. Just he got steals. He plays defense. I may have a man crush on him.
Yeah. Ramsey, I've noticed.
Yeah,
Ramsey did get a quick reply to make it 84-81, but then timeout advanced. Gladiators didn't quite foul quick enough. Eagles got the ball to Okoro, made two free throws, and that was the ball game,
and he got 40.
86-81. Yeah, so Okoro 13 of 21 for 40 points and 6 assists. Defoe was the only other player in double figures with 11 points and 7 rebounds and 5 assists as well. Ramsey 25, Barnes 19 and 9 rebounds, Whelan 13 points. That was Okoro's was the first 40-point game in a top flight British basketball game since Tyreek Armstrong in January 22, and with
At
13 made.
Newcastle.
Yes, with
Yeah,
30, I wasn't gonna bring that up,
I
Dave. But
remember that game. I remember that game very well. It was a layup after a layup after a layup,
yeah,
and after about 35 minutes, he made a couple of threes.
yeah, he did.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It was a lot of layups.
it was a
I
lot of
seem to
it.
remember you ranting about how many layups it was, Dave. And also, it's the fewest field goal makes, 13 for 40 points, since Matthew Scott had 13 for 42 points in January 2020.
I mean, the twist though for everybody else in relation to Okoro is that he is now extraordinarily tough to guard because you look now he's now shooting 43% from the 3 point line.
Mm,
And he has a first step and he has the ability to stop and pull up as well.
mm,
And he can go left and he can go right and he can finish at the rim both ways. So at this point, I'm not really, and Pat Whelan, who is a solid defender, at this point, I'm not really sure how you guard him. I think you probably have to hope that he's not feeling it.
mm.
Um, because yeah, I couldn't. I would struggle to find. I would struggle on the face of it to think how I would tell people to guard him. You'd probably force him left and take what comes, but
You might
it's
not
tough.
like what comes.
You may not like what comes. Yeah, yeah, that's right.
So let's go to Saturday. Surrey 89ers 83, Bristol Flyers 89, overtime game again. Lawrence and Steele were back, but Ray was out. Sheffield's still out. Uh, Flyers 6 of 8 from three in the first quarter, killed them on the rebounds 14-4. They had a 19-1 run that finished on the first play of the second quarter, and it was 36-15 Bristol led.
Yeah. It's a tale as old as time. The team that
Mm,
played the night before starts off in a fantastic rhythm
yeah, yeah.
and the three really well, and just because they're all feeling good about the game before, and then towards the end of the game, the legs start to wear out, and it becomes a lot harder.
Mm,
And I couldn't tell you the amount of times that happened. It happened to us quite a lot because we used to play Friday night, Friday at home, Saturday away.
mm,
So we had quite a lot of experience of it with it being a few Friday night teams, and you always knew you were going to come out right, and you just had to try and find a way of keeping the pace of the game going as the game went on. Um, and I mean, I was thinking before the game. I'm not sure that any team in the league would be more affected by losing a player than Surrey would be by losing Ray.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I can't think of an. You take one specific player out of a team.
Leicester and either Thompson or Hunter.
Jackson, maybe
Jackson, yeah.
Jackson, maybe Jackson, because Jackson does everything. Leicester have Tom. Yeah, you say that, but they have Washington and they have Shelton who are direct replacements.
Yeah.
Now they're not as impactful,
Mm,
but they're there. And I say that not so much because of the skill set of the guys that are coming out, but basically Jalen Ray, is a guy who can get his own shot at any time, and that Surrey team, which is short of a bit of physicality,
mm,
needs that.
mm,
It really needs that. So I just felt, if you take anybody, I mean, if you take a car out of Newcastle, then you have Knight, and if you take, McGill out, you have Chef, you have Nix, and all those
mm,
things. So I just think he's the one, possibly because Surrey are a bit shorter. They're only playing with five imports, they're a bit shorter on personnel. I did feel that that's a tough one. I also take back anything I said about him coming out of the game 2 minutes to go last week.
yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah.
if he's injured the next week, he gets a pass on that.
Yeah,
In fact, congratulations for coming back in the game and
yeah,
toughing it
yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah. So I think they struggled a little bit with that
Mm, yeah.
early because I think it does change the whole dynamic of what they play. I think they started Cholovinskas and Steele. I don't think Lawrence
Mm.
started, did he? I
No, he
can't
didn't. No,
remember.
no, no.
No, so they started with kind of one guard is good, as opposed to the two scoring guards that they normally have. And I think they took time to come to terms with that. And as I say, Bristol were in great rhythm,
The
as they would be.
Surrey chipped it down to 12 just before halftime, and then in the third quarter, Steele and Sholovinskas hit threes. They had a 20-2 run to lead 53-52, and then this was the point they'd figured
And
it out and they were
it is really,
moving.
and I know people think, oh, you're up 20 early, then you're throwing away a game. It is really tough to play from ahead all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
If you're ahead by that far, unless you're absolutely dominant on the talent side of it,
Mm,
right? Most blowout wins come from teams that pull away in the second to the third quarter
yeah.
when there isn't time. If you're up 20 in the first after a quarter, that's six a quarter, that's nothing.
Mm.
And so and your mindset kind of
Although
slightly
we'll
changes.
we'll come to a slight deviation in a couple of games'
Yeah, we
time.
will. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But your mindset is when you're leading does change, but more importantly, the opposition's mindset does as well. They play faster. They become more
Yeah.
desperate. Become more controlled because no one wants to be embarrassed on their own court. So yeah, so you're always, I think, always going to come back. As an aside, Cholovinskas, I was racking my brains last week to remember the last time I could think of a young British kid making massive 3-point shots on a TV game
Well,
to win it.
you're not pulling Cunningham out, are you? You're not going all the way to that,
No,
are
no,
you? It's the
no.
one movement at
The.
the end.
I'm going to go back to the. That was a 2-point shot. Anyway,
Oh, it was. Yeah,
I'm going to
yeah,
go back.
yeah.
I'm going to go back to an ITV digital game.
Okay. So we're at 2001.
Sheffield Arena.
Sheffield Arena.
There's a reason I would remember it.
Is it Bridgie?
No, there was a gingerhead Geordie made three threes in the last 5 minutes, including one with four
Oh,
seconds
was
to
that the
go.
triple overtime game?
No, that
No.
was Blaylock's game. That was earlier.
Yeah.
Graham Dotchin.
Oh. Oh.
Have any memory of Graham Dotchin?
Yeah, I remember the name. I can't remember the game.
No, well, it was. I know it was ITV Digital because I was the only person in the country who had a box. for the purposes
of
of
watching
watching the
me.
basketball. Yeah, watching you exactly. And I always remember because Steve Ogan Jimmy, it was Tony G's team for
Yeah.
Newcastle, and Steve Ogan Jimmy and TJ Walker were playing. Steve Ogan Jimmy, and you interviewed TJ at the end, and Steve Ogan Jimmy said, interview him," because Dotson had been waiting. He made three threes in the last one with 4 seconds to go in the corner to knock down to win by a point. And then unfortunately, what then he's what 20-year-old, and what then happened was he had a very very serious injury training with the GB age group squad,
Mm,
and his ankle was blown to pieces.
mm,
And I do know what he's doing now, but I've forgotten. So I couldn't think. I mean, I'm going back beyond because you've mentioned Cunningham there, and
mm.
Bridgie made a few, but Bridgie was at that point wasn't quite young, you know.
No, no.
Bridgie was never young. I mean, Bridgie, to be fair, Bridgie was 29 when he was 12.
Mm,
But Bridgie made a couple of big shots in the Cheshire game once. But I'm trying to think. There've been so few breakout. You know, Connor probably did at some point
yeah,
um, in some games, but there've been so few kind of breakout British players in the BBL who actually make plays that I couldn't think of anything in the last
no,
25 years. It's
no.
scary, isn't it?
Yeah,
Which
it
just
is.
goes to show what a job that
Yeah.
Cholovinskas is. Did.
And the fact that he did it again this week, because he then we mentioned a couple earlier there, and him and Gooden then hit threes that had them 9 up in the fourth quarter.
And he
But
doesn't look like he's going to miss, does he?
no, no, and to be
No.
fair, he didn't. He was 5 of 5. He missed the last one, but he hit his first five. Johnson and Walsh though then powered Bristol to a 14-5 spell, which put them back in front 72-74. Um,
Yeah.
go on.
And Johnson got going eventually. You know,
Yeah.
Johnson's a tough cover for Surrey. And at this point, you know, as I say, this is when without Ray, they're always going to be susceptible to droughts, and I thought they had a drought a
Uh,
long time.
let's go through the last few plays. 2:10 to go. James with the tough bank shot, 78-76. Both teams then turned it over. James then blocked Johnson. Surrey got an 8-second violation. And our friend Rob Hunt put on Twitter earlier a
So
screenshot.
yeah,
You see it. Just before
yeah.
we came on air, because I then went, oh, I thought that was an 8-second violation. I didn't write anything down. So while I was waiting for you to get back from court, I went and
Yeah,
had another look at that. And actually, the first frame that you can see the clock is his feet
yeah.
are not on the floor; they're in the air, and it says 16 seconds. So I put that back and said, I think it's a good call because his feet are above, and you can see the 6 on the clock. Rob came back to me and said, but it's 15.9. I said, not on the clocks with no tenths. It's 16 with the clocks on no tenths. And he came back and said that the clocks in Surrey have tenths. And I thought,
They
do
do,
they?
don't they?
I'm,
Yeah, I
I'm
thought that.
sure they don't. So then I went back. I looked on the stats, found a 24-second violation in the third quarter, went back onto Synergy and looked it so I could see it tick down to 0. And the tenths don't show on the clock. So as
Do they
far
not?
as and he said he's come back to me and said he's operated that clock and he thought they had tenths of a second. So I'm all confused. But on the
I thought they
evidence
had
that
tenths. I
they
thought it
they
was a 15. Yeah.
they don't. I can almost show you the
All right.
clip
Okay.
on there.
But if it's a 16, then it's definitely an 8-second call.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
it was a 15 clock,
On
then
the
certainly it
evidence
wasn't.
that I have, which is 543210 with no tenths on a clip
Yeah.
and his feet in the air with 16 where I can see the clock, it
Yeah.
looked like a good call. But
Okay. So they
further
have tenths on the
analysis may
game
be
clock, but not on
required.
the shot clock. They have tenths on the game clock, but
Yeah,
not on the
but not
shot
on the
clock.
shot clock.
That's all
Yes,
right, okay.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
anyway, you know, it's borderline. It's a 50-50 jobby.
yeah. So 121
But
to go.
more's the point, you know, why is Cholovinskas handling the ball at that
Yeah,
point? Where are the
yeah,
guard?
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, good job by Bristol taking it out of his hands,
yeah.
taking it out of Gooden's hands and Lawrence's hands, but they've got to take responsibility for that.
Yeah, I think we'll come back to that in a second.
Yeah, we will, yeah.
121 to go. Good cut off the ball by Lewis for a jam, 78-78. And then on the inbound, Nedos has the ball again under pressure, loses it, and Louis this time scores it 78 to
Yeah,
80.
well, they denied Gooden, and you know they denied Gooden at that point. You know they have to have one of the bigs has to come back to break it up. But you basically, if you're denying someone like Gooden, then what you want is one of your bigs to to be a safety catch to come back, or Lawrence to come back and get the ball, but he's gone to the far end. So when your bigs comes back, so if you're face guarding Gooden, the big can catch the ball, and then Gooden's off on the run because Gooden's got a step on him, and they didn't do that, so they just left Nedas out there on his own, and that is not his skill set at this point in time. Again, it's a different thing bringing the ball up against under 18s than it is against pros. He's not been asked to do that the whole game. He's not been asked to do that at any point during his time with Surrey that I can remember
Mm,
to handle the ball to get it over half court.
mm,
So they rather left him on an island.
mm. Timeout, minute to go. Nearly a turnover, but James gets to the rim off the glass, ties the scores at 80, and then 34.8 seconds to go. James Steele, running back, looked like a foul to me, but was given out of bounds to the Flyers. Looked like he got slapped across the wrist as far as I could see, but it wasn't called. Um,
Yeah, well, yeah,
and the
I
way the
wasn't
ball
sure.
went as well, even like it's hard to tell from the side camera. It looked like a foul on the
But
baseline.
it certainly it came off James's hand.
Yeah,
So why did it come out of James's hand?
mm, yeah, and go
And
that way.
arguably, if it's well, it was James's hand, but the ball's not going to go down where it
Yeah,
would logically go if you're going to knock.
or backwards.
Then is there not some contact or
Yeah,
backwards? Yeah, exactly. And it went up. Whenever the ball goes up, that's a giveaway, isn't it? The
mm,
ball goes up because players bring his arms up with the ball,
mm,
and the arms are pulled down. The ball goes up.
mm.
Anyway, yeah.
Uh,
Replay,
yeah.
replay.
Lewis missed a three. Good and down the middle. Ball knocked loose out of bounds. 2.8 seconds to go. Timeout. We've seen this play before, James. That sort of shot from about 16, 17 feet in the corner. Decent look. Didn't knock it down.
That's a great look. I mean, Bristol blew the coverage because you look afterwards and you see McCormack and I can't remember it was Lewis. They got a switch on that and they didn't switch on that or whatever they went to be doing. They didn't. James is probably that's his shot he's shown over the past however long past few months that 16, 17 feet he's comfortable knocking it down either off the dribble or off the catch. Just not at the end.
Mm.
That's about
Uh,
two or three that he's missed at
yeah,
the
yeah,
end. And,
yeah.
so as a coach, you're getting a good look, but eventually you might have to go to somebody else.
Mm. Not a lot of scoring in overtime. A Walsh three made it 83-84 with three to play, but actually there were no more scores until 8 seconds to go in the game
Yeah,
in overtime.
that's kind of Jalen Ray. They
Yeah.
need that's where I miss Jalen Ray scoring. I'm sorry. That's why I say he's probably the most irreplaceable player on any roster in the whole league.
Mm,
Um, just because of what he provides that nobody else on that team does. They don't have um Gooden can give you what he can give you, and Lawrence is going to not make mistakes and make shots. But they don't have a wing athlete who's gonna they don't who's gonna go and score the ball. They just don't. Um, and they don't have a Zach Jackson. They don't have a Seneca Knight, or Aaron Rye or anything like that. So they are so dependent for creativity on their guards, and particularly, they're built around Jalen Ray, and he's not there. That hurts them when it matters.
last couple of plays, 13.2 seconds to go. Alain Louis with a foul that I would put in the category we put TJ Atwoods in earlier, stopping
Yeah.
the clock and sending Gooden to the line. It's still a 4 point
To be
game.
fair, I mean, he did seem to know about it, Louis. He seemed to understand it a
Yeah.
little bit more than we did. He did look
uh,
annoyed with him, which is fair
yeah,
enough.
yeah.
And he was
Uh,
kind of riding him down the line as opposed to trying to foul him.
Yeah. Gooden misses both free throws. Adelican with the offensive rebound, but couldn't make the putback. And then Johnson gets the ball and makes two free throws and finishes the game 83-89.
I just think that Bristol are a little bit deeper than Surrey, and Bristol's depth helped them in this game. And I mean, yeah, they played the night before, um, which logically an overtime game, the second night of a back-to-back, you're expecting you're going to lose. But I think Bristol kind of tapped into something in that London game,
Mm,
which they really needed. Because if that had, London ran Manchester out of the building by 40 last week,
mm,
you know, and the difference between Manchester and Bristol really isn't so much in relation to talent. It was in relation to the way that Bristol basically sucked it up and started playing harder.
mm.
And I think they needed that. They needed to find that. And I think that helped them get the way through this game against Surrey.
Let's go to Sunday. Oh, did I give the scorers? I didn't, did I? James 18, Sholovinskas 5 of 6 for 3 for 17 points. Adelicon 15 points, 14 rebounds, 6 assists. Johnson 26 points, Smith 16, Walsh 13 points and 6 rebounds. We didn't really mention Smith. He was great early on when they were
Yeah,
building
he
up that
was
lead.
actually. He was, yeah, racing
Uh,
threes was
he did,
good for
yeah.
him.
Sunday, Manchester basketball 74, Leicester Riders 87. Obviously, Kerry's still out. We talked earlier about Madut and FAJ returning. Um, the thing I wrote down was the Shelton thing first. The first thing I wrote down. He drew an M1. He flexes the muscles, and in flexing, he elbows Faj to the ground and gets
There's absolutely, yeah.
called for an
I've been a bit
unsportsmanlike foul.
critical. I've been a bit critical of Shelton. Obviously, his mindset has been less, but you know what you're getting with him, and I think the ref had to call it. I think if you hit
Yeah,
somebody with your, well, you've got to call them sports foul.
yeah,
But I've also absolutely no doubt that it was entirely unintentional,
yeah.
and it was, you just got to be careful where you flex. I mean, you don't need to flex. It's an and one. It's your job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're a bit Roy Keane there. It's your job.
Yeah, and
Wouldn't he
ultimately,
do
it just
Shelton if there's no flex after it?
he
That's
finds
what he does.
remarkable ways to get into trouble with referees, doesn't
Yeah,
he?
yeah, yeah,
I remember one of the Sheffield last year where he ended up committing a sports night with about 8 seconds to go
mm.
in a one-shot game. You remember on the rebound at
Yes,
Sheffield?
yes, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
what then there's his arm. I mean, he just I don't know. You're not going to suppose you're going to change him, but it would frustrate me. I think is probably the
Yeah.
phrase I would. But yeah, it was a proper call. You had to
Yeah,
call it.
yeah,
You hit.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was one of them where I went, "What was that? How did that?" And then I wound it back, and I was like,
You realize,
yeah, he's caught him with an elbow. What can you do?" Anyway, Riders with the hot starts, 14-7 after 3.5 minutes, but Manchester cut it back to 14-16. The other thing I had that sort of I was talking to the people at Cheshire about is end of the first quarter. Madup misses a layup, a finger roll in transition, and Riders the other way really shouldn't have got a shot, get a three. And there
yeah.
was another play at the end of the second quarter
Quarter. That was the game.
where they
Yeah.
again went too soon, missed, and Leicester then got two at the other end, and you sort of go, it's a 9 point game at half time, and you've given 5 points away, and actually it's seven because
And
Madut should have made the layup.
yeah, yeah. They shoot themselves in the foot on a regular basis. Their attention. I'm down on Manchester, I'm afraid.
Mm,
I really am
mm,
because I see them as the most underachieving group in the league at the moment.
mm, mm,
Because of the numbers that they've got. They've got plenty of talent,
mm,
but they're just not finding a way to make it work. And that play absolutely summed them up. They got to stop. Midut flies down the court. Okay, misses a layup. That happens. What then happens? Because I rewound this play to have a look at it
mm,
afterwards to say, well,
mm,
how come you've got basically a 1-on-0 fast break, right? So how come you end up with their best shooter in the corner wide open off one pass? Because in reality, um, Manchester should be in a perfect position to defend that.
mm,
Basically, Madut's making a layup. So you should be back and you should be matching up. And what happens is Mitchell steps to the basket instead. When the ball gets passed to, I think it might be in Connor in semi-transition to bring the ball to the court, Mitchell, instead of retreating back to into his half, he steps up to the ball. And there's Madut running back, and there's another guy, I think maybe Del Pesce or FJ, who's maybe at the half court line. And you actually freeze the play. Connor's got the ball like halfway in his own half, which is probably 60 feet from the basket. Unless you've got a 3-on-2,
mm,
and you're just thinking, no, and what because Mitchell steps forward, Connor was able to dribble past him, which creates even more of that 3-on-2. Then they've got 2-on-1 on the other side. The only guy who's meant to be defending the shoot, I think, is actually his FJ under the basket. Well, he's a big guy, so he's thinking about defending the rim instead of understanding the threat. And suddenly you've got a wide open 3-point shot.
mm, mm,
And it was just a cluster, basically.
mm,
And they have too many of them.
mm,
You know, they They are too talented. I mean, this game I thought was inevitable.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
it
I,
felt
I
like
thought
that.
it was inevitable. I didn't think, they could stop Leicester. We had the normal Abercrombie binge of three pointers at the end
I
of the
was
third
about to
quarter.
say that. That was
Yeah,
the next bit that I've got is, and I was sitting there going, "What is that?" It's like it frustrated me for Manchester that Abercrombie hits three threes in a row late in the third quarter. It's back out to nine, and really that sort of killed it off. But it's like we've seen this movie several times this
they've seen it
season. Yeah,
before.
yeah.
And it's like, you have to be cognizant of the details of the game. If you
Mm,
want to beat a good team, you've got to take some of them. And Jackson strolled through this game.
mm,
When I say strolled through this game, you know, you could see that he never felt that they were at risk of losing this game,
mm, mm,
just because he got whatever shot he wanted. He knew he could get whatever shot he wanted when he wanted it,
mm,
and you have to plan for some of these teams, some of these guys. You have to plan for some of these players. How are we going to stop them? And the problem that they have is that whilst they're a really talented offensive team, offensive players, they have dead possessions,
mm,
Manchester.
mm,
They have dead possessions where they don't get the ball where they want it to go, where it becomes very stagnant. They, what is happening with Dubose? Is he starting or is he not? Is he playing much or is he not? What's his role in the team? Haven't quite figured it out. Is he going to play with Ashton Langford? Is he going to play instead of Ashton Langford? Nick Lewis comes in, puts up some shots. This time Lewis is playing, kind of John's playing a little bit, but not a lot. Kayo is gone very, 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 very cold. And it just looks like they've got February written all over them.
yeah,
And I don't
yeah,
think
yeah.
he's going to have to find a way of snapping them out of this malaise because that's, three, four, five, probably lost 6 or 7 games in a row now.
Mm, mm,
And I haven't counted, but there's no easy wins. Talent's not going to win. Talent's not going to be enough.
mm. Ashton Langford 21, John 10. Nobody else in double figures. They shot 39% from the floor. You mentioned Jackson 21 points, 8 of 11 shooting, 9 rebounds, 6 assists. Thompson was 8 of 9 for 16 points, and Abercrombie, we talked about his threes, had 14.
It's little stuff though. It's like saying Nick Lewis misses a layup just before, I think maybe in the first half, maybe, yeah, the same basket that Madut missed a layup, maybe near to half time. He's worked the switch. He's gained a switch on the ball screen to get Thompson in the action.
Mm,
So he's going to Thompson. The reason he
mm,
misses a layup is because Thompson's a shot blocker, and that he's got a bit of deterrent factor. You don't go at Thompson.
mm.
You know, you have to be smarter than that.
Well,
You have to,
that's the noticeable thing is his blocks per game is going downwards, and it's
yeah.
going downwards because nobody dares go near him anymore.
Well, because why would you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Why are you gonna go at the guy who's
yeah.
the most dominant
To be
defender in
fair,
the
he had
league?
3 in this, so it's going
You
back
have
up
three in
after
this
this
game, yeah.
game. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's like that's not smart.
yeah, yeah.
Just thinking you've got it's a cerebral game at times, and I just say I'm down on Manchester. I hope they've managed to find a way around a bit, but I'm not sure. But a team with that degree of, they haven't got a noticeable hole in their roster,
Mm,
but they're not winning and they're not coming close to winning. They're not
mm,
coming close to beating good teams, and they're losing to good teams multiple times, and that's a problem.
yeah, yeah. So London Lions 96, Caledonia Gladiators 51. This was a game for about 8 minutes. It was 12-14 at that stage, but London went on a 22-2 run. Hadzibegovic had 7 of them, and it was 34-16. And I sort of watched the second half when I got back last night, sort of
Because,
skimmed through, and there wasn't really anything in it, really.
well, again, I mean, again, it was what I was talking about with the kind of the talent issues that Caledonia have got with that lineup. You can't neither Fagbendi nor Malcolm. Fagbendi may have had a few points, but I don't think Malcolm scored. Um, it's just, your Whelan is being absolutely just covered to an nth degree. His first name on the scouting report all the time, so
Mm,
it's hard for him. And Ramsey's the only guy who's really got a step in relation to quickness,
mm,
and it's different it's different scoring on Newcastle than it is scoring on London. London's defense is bigger, they are longer, they are more together, they are deeper. Um, so yeah, I thought they kind of ran out of legs a little bit again. I thought Kane gave them absolutely nothing, and that's what he's there for. Um, but they bring in ultimately Hughes and Onwas off the bench, and neither Hughes nor Onwas is a guy that you would think is going to give you 15 or 20 in a game on a regular
Mm,
basis.
mm,
Um, I've already said that, Malcolm and Fag Bentley are probably averaging about 7 points a game between them.
mm,
It's Ramsey's third game. Um, so where are their points going to come from against the best defensive team in the league? And they're a defensive juggernaut,
mm,
And eventually, and on top of that, I think probably the emotion and the travel of the Friday night game as well. And maybe even the thought that we've cracked it a little bit.
mm,
And they just got an absolute awakening.
mm,
Um, that said, they still kept doing the right things. They still kept moving the basketball. They didn't ever at any point kind of resort to being a rabble, if I can put it that way.
yeah, yeah.
Weren't able to make plays. They weren't able to finish. Because out of that, London got into some rhythm, and London got, and it gets a little bit dispiriting if you're defending the team when you're down by 30.
Mm,
So yeah, it was a wake-up call to a certain degree, but uh, I think we're just beginning to find out how dominant this London team can be,
mm,
right? And this was a perfect storm game in relation to Caledonia, and they're 2-14, and they're short on scoring. I get that, but that London team didn't let up
mm,
at any point, and a big crowd in there.
mm.
Upper deck had people in, and yeah, it was a little bit. It was just remnants of the Imperial Death March.
We're not quite got there yet, have we?
Not quite there yet, but you know what I mean. Just like that. So yeah, Caledonia have to chalk it up. We'll see whether
Mm,
they're bringing anybody else. I mean, it's probably a bit late to bring in anybody else now. I think it's probably, insofar as what they might do for your kind of your team
mm,
chemistry, whatever, because they've got chemistry.
mm,
No question, they've got chemistry now. Caledonia, they've got more than they had. Do you spend the time working on Fag Bentley and Malcolm and making them into, bona fide starters?
mm,
Or do you find somebody else to come in? I don't see Kane lasting. I
mm,
just don't. I thought his body language was just rubbish.
mm. Delay, 7 of 7 for 18 points and 7 rebounds. Flood, 4 of 4 from 3 for 14 points. Rye, 4 of 4 from the floor for 10 points. 62% field goal shooting, 14 of 23 for 3. Ramsey, 18, Barnes, 14, 29% field goal shooting, 18% from 3. Look,
Ouch.
yeah, let's come to the one of the wildest games I've ever seen, really. Cheshire Phoenix 65, Sheffield Sharks 87. Austin wasn't there through illness. Groves was back and nearly came on at one stage, I think, but he didn't play in the end. Obviously, Jeffries is still in a boot, and Lindsay wasn't there. So tight first quarter, nothing in it, but some momentum for Cheshire at the end of the quarter when Wild hit a late three and then White hit a halfway line buzzer beater to make it 25-19.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, Wild never lets him down.
Mm,
He struggled a little bit defensively. He gets into foul. He does get into foul trouble because he's probably not got the physical dimensions of an SLB player. He's not that big. His arms aren't that long, but he can shoot the ball. He's not scared of shooting the ball,
mm,
and he plays like he belongs.
mm,
When he gets his minutes, he plays like he's meant to be there. He has that
mm,
the way that he carries himself, and that's not always the case um, with the kind of British players who are like numbers 9 and 10 on the bench.
mm,
And they needed him obviously to play in this game because probably the the thing that was most definitive to how this game was decided was that Timberlake got injured.
mm.
Because without Austin, when they lost Timberlake as well,
Yeah.
um,
And
that
actually, Scott Grayson had gone out with a hand injury, and come back with that all taped up, and he'd only come back in because Timberlake had gone off injured. Timberlake
yeah,
did come back for a couple of minutes, but then never played in the second half.
tightened up. Yeah, then now Sheffield was quite interesting watching Sheffield because Nixon never got going in the first half, and basically they played 4 out 1 in, and Clay was able to score at will at the rim
Mm,
because he was able to attack the rim, and we've talked about Cheshire's lack of kind of shot blocking, and White's a better defender playing against a guy who's back to the basket than probably a guy who's going straight at him like Clay.
Mm.
Clay's probably the most dexterous big man in the league in relation to
Yeah.
the ability to finish with both hands. You know, he made a couple of unbelievable plays. But that in itself, I've talked about this a little before, that in itself kind of hurts Sheffield's rhythm because um, there's lots of other guys. The other guys are kind of standing around on the perimeter, and then he's able to go 1-on-1 and score. But they're not getting many open threes. They're not getting many kickouts. And Nixon's not got going. So they only end up with like what 32 points at halftime.
34 points at halftime. Cheshire scored the last 5 points of the half. It was 45-34. And given all their defensive woes, and you got people like me talking about the fact that they're averaging 114 points against in the last 3 games and all of that, they must have been delighted with that. And they then scored the first 6 points of the third quarter, and they're 51-34 in. And at that point, Sheffield looked in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and then I thought, it's amazing how things happen. But Clay got his third foul.
Third foul, yeah.
And he sat down.
Mm,
And what I was talking about rhythm in the first half, I made that point specifically because of what happened here.
yeah.
Because they don't really, Tiber at the end of end of the second quarter, for probably the first time I've ever seen, he actually went with Clay and Orcherobia,
Mm,
trying to figure out something that works. Clay's never been a four, and they've always been either or. And in the second half, when Clay went out, he didn't put Orcherobia in.
mm,
He went five guard. He had Jamal playing the five effectively,
mm.
and McGill and Nixon and Rotino, Anderson, and somebody else who I've forgotten about.
Trying to think. You said Rutino, didn't you? Carry on. It
Groves
will
wasn't.
come. No, Groves wasn't
Yeah,
playing.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, anyway, no, no, Rodney Glasgow.
Glasgow. Yes, there we go. Yeah, yeah,
Glasgow.
yeah,
So basically, he went ultra small,
yeah.
right? Ultra small. He's never three guards, Rotino at the four, Jamal Anderson at the five. That means they're playing five out.
Mm,
Okay. So what that means is you don't have Cheshire don't have the luxury of having somebody in the middle of the paint to guard Clay,
mm,
right? Which is blocking up the paint. So the paint isn't blocked up, which means that on penetration, and I've talked previously about how, Cheshire's perimeter defense doesn't prevent penetration enough to protect the rim. They were able to get kickouts from getting the ball into the paint, kicking it out for threes.
mm.
McGill, bang. McGill, bang. Nixon, I think maybe the next
Yeah,
one. I can't
Nixon.
remember. Maybe
Yeah,
the next
yeah, yeah.
Nixon, bang. Suddenly, your 17-point lead and an 8-point lead, and you may as well not be in the lead at all.
Well, it was a
And
12. It was actually a 12-0 run because he got Nixon made the three, and then he got 3 free throws being fouled on another one, and it was a five
yeah,
point game.
again, defend without fouling. But yeah, and that's in a minute and a half. So
Mm,
the air's just kind of gone out of the building.
mm,
But a lot of that is because, as I say, they didn't have Clay in the middle.
mm,
Because the space was there for them to penetrate and kick. And Cheshire's rotations after that initial kind of attempt at defense aren't good enough. So they gave up open catch and shoot threes. And Cheshire at this point, as you say, they're short on bodies.
mm,
So Wild's the first guy in off the bench in the second half, and they are playing. Whilst we've thought about how fast they play this year, and we've talked about it, a lot of that is Austin,
mm,
and a lot of that is having plenty of bodies. But if you were to think about it, you wouldn't say Idle Rock is a full court up and down player.
mm,
You probably wouldn't say Holden is. Holden can go, but he's also a kind of he likes to dribble the ball and take his time. Um, the two guys who are the most aggressive in open court for them, or three guys most aggressive in open court, Scott Grayson injured, Austin not playing, Timberlake injured.
mm,
So is it a worry? Is it a wonder, therefore, that they slowed down?
mm,
And they did slow down. And unfortunately, when they slowed down, they took away the USP.
mm,
And in kind of that slower game, unless Holden went off and Holden got tired, and I think, and they missed some bunnies. Unless Holden went off, they weren't running with Sheffield.
mm,
The other thing about Sheffield, which really helped them with that lineup, um, is that Rotino and Anderson don't need the ball.
mm,
Rotino and Anderson are still going to do their job at the other end, even if they're not touching the basketball. So McGill and Nixon. and to a lesser degree Glasgow, they can monopolise the shots and the ball handling,
mm,
but they're still going to have Cheshire are still going to have the benefit of that at the other end. Sheffield are still going to have the benefit of that at the other end. Whereas that's not always been the case with Jeffries and with the Americans, basically Jeffries and Matthews and those guys who, if they don't touch the ball, it's harder to keep them involved because they're scorers.
mm.
They want to touch the ball. So it's kind of a perfect storm for Sheffield to get them back in the game, and then they just overpowered Cheshire in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So in the 18 minutes between the first minute and the
I
last
figured this.
minute of the second quarter, it was 49-8 to Sheffield.
Yeah, that's just, I mean, that's just nuts, isn't it, for a professional game?
Mm.
Um, but yeah,
I thought Cheshire were
hot.
going to get. I thought Cheshire were going to get zeroed in the fourth quarter. When it
Yeah,
got
I
to
did
two
too.
minutes and they hadn't scored, I thought
Yeah,
they're not going to score here. Fortunately for them, it was just about a minute to go. I think it was an outward dunk or something. They at least got off
yeah,
zero.
yeah. And I think, as I said, it's February, and you have to have that togetherness and that belief to keep you going through the hard times. And they unfortunately folded like a pack of cards.
Mm.
No, there wasn't a full pack.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. It wasn't a full pack.
Mm.
Missing the kind of ace of spades and jack of hearts.
Mm.
But nevertheless, you can't be. You've got to tuck in at one end or the other, and you're telling me even now Scott Grayson might be injured, and he's played great for them for a number of weeks.
Mm.
But even then, you're telling me that people like Holden and Atwood, um, and White, they're going to go what for 8 points in 18 minutes?
Mm.
Really? I mean, these are. There's a degree of physical in that, but there's also a significant degree of mental.
Mm.
And so that is a full discombobulation, full mental disintegration for
Mm.
that to happen.
Mm.
Um, and so they're in spiral watch, and probably halfway in the spiral at the minute. Um, Manchester are as well, and what you see is the three teams that have to win games are now beginning to win games.
Mm. Mm. Holden, 14.6 rebounds. Outward, 14.6 rebounds as well. Scott Grayson, 12 points and 6 rebounds. He shot 33% from the floor. McGill, 29 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. Clay, 20 points and 8 rebounds. Nixon, 19 points and 8 rebounds. I was looking up last night that sort of swing thing from
Yeah,
17 up to losing by 22. I can only go back to 16, 17 for biggest
right.
leads. In that time, the only swings I've got at this level was the Giants. You remember that game in September 2023 where they led by 11 against London in the first quarter and lost by 39 in the end. It
Yes, I
was
do. That
it was
was
a
that
teaser,
was the
yeah.
one where Decker went the length of the court and dunked
Yeah,
it at the end of
dunked
the.
it.
We all
Yeah,
thought, oh shit, pardon
yeah,
the
yeah,
language.
yeah.
Oh, this
That's
guy's
the
a bit
one.
good. Yes, I remember that game.
I assume you remember this one as well, Dave.
But
Flyers
then
led by 18 at Newcastle in March 2018 and lost by 23.
March 18, that would have
Yeah,
been in the new arena.
yeah. They were up 18 in second quarter, and Eagles won by
I think I have
23.
a memory. I think I have a memory that that might have been down to our player coach who came into the game and basically changed the game in its entirety without
Mm,
scoring the ball.
mm,
I would need to check that. But that would be kind of because that was a point where he was being used quite sparingly and coming off the bench to plug holes because we had a bit
yeah,
of a holy here, and he wouldn't have been starting. And I think I have a memory that he just basically decided this is not happening at the age of 45, and took over that game. I'd be interested to know what Fab's plus minus was in that game.
I
Interested to
uh,
know.
I I can get a link for it. The other one that I've got, I've not written the date down, but it was before that. I think it was 2017. Worcester led by 16 to Leicester and then ended up losing by 23. So
Dean was that?
they led by 16 and lost by
Yeah,
23.
2017.
I think it was, yeah, I think it was 2017. Yeah,
Oh, that was a dominant Leicester team, mind.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
that was a triple winning Leicester team. That was I'm trying to think who Worcester had that year, whether that was one of PJ's better teams or whether it was.
I don't think PJ was coaching, if I remember
It wasn't tight.
rightly.
It wasn't the year that they lost all the games and they had the American guy who went home.
No, I think it was a better team than that. I think it was a better
Right.
team than that. I didn't write it
Oh
down,
well.
so I didn't. I'm also sort of filibustering while I'm looking for March 2018 because I didn't write the
All right.
exact date down. Newcastle at home to Bristol, 1973. That will be the one there. Let's have a look.
I don't remember.
Talk amongst yourselves, people.
Yeah, please do. This is all.
Fab
It's very important.
Flanoy was only a plus 10 in
Only a plus 10.
in
Oh, well.
16 minutes. Actually, Jay Sean Page coming off the bench and playing 35 minutes was a plus 32.
Right.
Kai Williams, or was it Kyle? No, it was Kai Williams
Oh,
was a
17,
plus
18.
a
Right. Yeah.
plus 13.
That would
Yeah,
have been no. I've got the wrong season down. That's right. That would have been
yeah.
Sports Central season. That makes more sense. If it's yeah, I can't remember why Jay Sean came off the
You were
bench.
on
He
the
probably
bench, Dave. Your name is down on the bench here.
he probably missed his practice or something. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
He came off the bench and played 35 minutes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so we didn't sit him down for long.
It wasn't much of a punishment, that was it?
No, I don't think it. No, I'm
32
joking. We
points,
never.
32 points, 5 assists, 3 steals. Nimley had
I'm joking.
27 points and
We
eight
never had the
assists.
discipline. Never
Yeah,
had discipline like that. We did try to get him to come off the bench once.
yeah,
I remember before he may have been injured. Before we played Sheffield at Christmas, we tried to get Jay Short to come off the bench because he'd been a six man at college and we were in his
started
defense.
Gungina as well. He was a minus three,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Williams,
you're
Jamal
right.
Williams was a minus 10 having started. So
Right. Oh well. But
mm,
the one time that we tried to get Jay to come off the bench, he begged us for one more chance to come off the start, and he played 36 minutes, and we beat Sheffield and
yeah,
Sheffield. So that was about it.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh no, that's the wrong season. Sorry, my fault. But yeah,
mm.
Page. Ooh. Page is
So
actually the Page had a 40 and 10 game, and Okoro had a 40 and 6 game. So that we were talking on Friday night after the game
mm,
with some of the lads at the Eagles, about how that was how Okoro's performance was a little bit Page like,
mm, mm,
because he just was able just to score the ball whenever he wanted.
mm. Quick run through the league table. Lions 14 and 4 atop. Sheffield second, 13 and 4. Leicester third, 12 and 4. Newcastle 9 and 7 in fourth. And then Cheshire 8 and 10. Bristol 5 and 7. Surrey 5 and 11. Manchester 5 and 12. And Caledonia 2 and 14.
Yeah, Caledonia is due to organisational dysfunction. Manchester are overachieving. Sorry, have dropped some games that they really shouldn't have dropped.
Manchester are
Manchester
underachieving.
underachieving. Sorry, I
Yeah,
meant
good, good,
underachieving.
good.
Sorry, have dropped some games they shouldn't have dropped. Cheshire are in a bit of free fall. Um, sorry, Bristol haven't played enough for us to be quite sure as to where they're going to be, but you'd expect them to be kind of at that 4, 5, 6 level.
Mm,
Newcastle are probably going to be sidetracked by Europe, in relation to getting any higher than fourth, and then the top three are going to have to play each other a lot,
mm,
and that's going to make a difference.
mm,
What I will say is, I think Sheffield have to play Newcastle 4 times as well.
mm,
Which is, in Newcastle are probably more best place to be the spoiler out of the teams underneath.
mm.
So those will be interesting games. Also, a bit of a rant. I can't believe there's a game on Cup final day. I find that just ridiculous. Um, London v Newcastle's tipping off
Yeah,
at 2 o'clock on
yeah.
Cup final day, and that's actually it's even worse because it's 48 hours before Newcastle have to go and play in Denmark.
Mm,
Which really, we should be doing our best to give them a chance, not to have them playing on the Cup final day,
mm,
40 hours beforehand. But they shouldn't be games on the Cup final day.
mm.
If that's happening, we've got too many games.
Uh, I read somewhere, I don't know it to be true, but I read somewhere that the original cup final date was a different date. So actually that was moved into a day where there were games already scheduled, and
Mm.
I
Yeah,
know
okay.
some of them have been moved because I know Manchester against Leicester, I was supposed to be doing that, and that was on the 9th, and it got moved. So
Yeah, yeah, it is what it is. But
perhaps that one could
don't
be.
complain about lack of attention if you're having two of your best supported teams playing a game at the same time as a cup final.
Mm, mm,
Well, you're going to lose the eyeballs of those. The people who would watch London and Newcastle.
mm.
Just crazy. Sorry.
Uh,
That's my
Right. There we go.
bring
So,
on Chris Grant.
yeah. So,
Oh,
are you on the same table as them or something? Is that what you're going to tell me?
on Monday night. Oh goodness, I don't think I'll be in the same room.
Yeah.
I think I
So it,
have to
it
be.
it is, in case you didn't know, International Week. So I say Dave and I will be off. One of us will be covering at least 5 games, and the other one will be off. Uh, uh,
Absolutely.
so we'll leave it for next week and be back unless something unbelievable happens and we have to have an emergency pod. You never know. And we'll be back in 2 weeks, I think.
Yeah, it's a big week though. To be
Yeah, it
fair,
is big
we
week,
are one
big
week
week.
away
Yeah.
from Eurobasket. They've worked really hard to get to where they're at. They've got, the big Greece at home. Um, yeah, we have Czech Republic at home. If we win at Holland, it's basically done.
Mm,
Even I think if we lose by less than 4 in Holland, I think it's done. Um, so it's a massive week. It's even more massive because we've just had Quinn Ellis break out in Italy
yeah. Just
over
won
the
the cup
weekend and
MVP.
won the cup and be the MVP, which is a big thing. It's a
Mm,
big thing. So a 21-year-old kid to be 21-year-old British kid to be MVP of the Italian Cup final. And we've got a kid playing in the NBA
mm,
who realistically is like, could be available in the summer. No
mm.
reason why he shouldn't be. Eurobasket with Tozan. So, suddenly you've got a 21-year-old point guard and a 23-year-old NBA power forward.
Mm.
That puts a different slant on, your
Yeah,
capability. Eurobasket, we've got to get there first.
yeah, got to get there
So it's a
first.
really
Yeah.
big week to get there first.
Mm.
Um, because we can also hopefully if we can get to Eurobasket, we can demonstrate some progress from the disaster that was the last time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll be there at Newcastle on Monday night shouting on. Anybody else? Come along, come along.
Indeed. Well, enjoy. I'll be doing a different game on Monday night, so I'm
Right.
not even sure I'll be able to watch it. But
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, on that note, well, let's pack it up, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks to do it all over again. But for now, goodbye.
Bye, guys.